Welcome back to my blog, everyone. This is Lauren. Again, I'll be talking about what goes on in the political world. So recently there has been news about the rise of a political tactic that was developed by campaigns. The tactic is called quote approval. So this is a campaign strategy that requires reporters to submit quotations they intend to use to a candidate's press office before they actually publish anything. Obviously, the purpose is to allow the candidate's press office to omit certain quotations and to change others that will be published in order to adhere to the campaign's message. Now, a reporter is aware of this practice before entering into an interview, because submitting the quotes for review is the condition upon which the reporter is granted access to that interview in the first place. In other words, in exchange for access, journalists are told what they can and can't use in a story. They capitulate to this request for fear that they won't get access unless they agree. The New York Times was one of the first publications to expose this campaign tactic and to report about the rapid rise of quote approval. It listed various organizations that have consented to interviews under such terms, including Bloomberg, The Washington Post, Vanity Fair, Reuters, and even the New York Times itself. Apparently, quote approval is now commonplace throughout Washington and on the campaign trails, and the practice is only becoming more prevalent. Romney campaign advisors insist that reporters ask them to greenlight most interview material. Specifically, journalists interviewing any of Romney's 5 sons must agree to use only quotations that were approved by the press office. And quote approval is also a standard tactic for the Obama campaign, used by his top strategists and by almost all mid-level aides in Chicago and at the White House. Even Obama's spokespeople, who are paid to be quoted, sometimes require journalists to submit quotations for approval before publishing them. Now, after the Supreme Court's healthcare ruling last month, the White House held a press briefing. But when reporters asked to quote part of the conversation, even anonymously, they were not granted permission. Journalists were only allowed to paraphrase what senior officials said, but they were forbidden to put anything in quotations or to identify the speakers. You can probably guess what I'm going to ask next. What goes on? I mean, why are we allowing this? What has happened to journalism? Is quote approval ever justified on the candidate side or on the reporter side? Well, from the first angle, our politicians should be honest and trustworthy. As citizens, we should be able to feel confident that the political candidates would not engage in bargaining for their own gain. If any kind of bargaining takes place, it should be for the sake of the nation. But bargaining access to get the kind of news coverage a candidate desires is a motive that is solely for personal gain. The practice only benefits the candidates at the expense of the citizens. How can we trust politicians when their quote approval tactic already makes their quotations less available to us and defies the public interest? As frustrating as the reality is, we do not live in an ideal world, and I am not completely surprised by politicians' stealthy and unfair tactics. What is more stunning to me is the fact that reporters are actually agreeing to this kind of bargain. Journalists are the individuals we rely on to expose injustices and lies that plague us. If they agree to quote approval, they are in essence working for political campaigns, propagating whatever information the press offices wish to promote, rather than working for an independent press, which is how the press should be. As citizens, we need to hold journalists and the press accountable for how they report. We cannot trust reporters and news organizations that take part in this practice of quote approval. We should demand that they not submit to these new campaign tactics, and that they uphold their role as journalists and their importance to society by refusing to act as objects of political campaigns. Thanks everyone for watching, and check back later in the week for my next video blog.